Welcome to Higher Self Mastery, the podcast for women ready to leave behind who they were told to be and remember who they truly are. I'm your host, Dharmi Schumacher. This is your space to come home to yourself, to honor the inner pull for more truth and more depth, and more meaning as you enter a new chapter of your life. Together, we're reframing midlife crisis into the midlife magic that it actually is, because this is your rebirth. Through soulful conversations and spiritual tools, you'll reconnect to your truth and reclaim your voice and live the life that your soul came here for. So let's begin. Hello and welcome back. If you've ever felt excluded or judged by other women, or found it really difficult to maintain female friendships, or perhaps you are the one who is doing the judging, perhaps you're scrolling through social media and you've caught yourself on more than one occasion just flippantly passing comments on women, images of women, perhaps, or videos of women that you don't even know, and not the most pleasant way, with criticism or judgment, then this is an episode that you're going to want to hear. So welcome back to another episode of Higher Self Mastery. This is part 2 of a 2-part mini-series. Last week we discussed the witch wound. So these are 2 big wounds that we women have in our DNA, have absorbed and culturally been conditioned by, and I would go so far as to say has also to some degree altered our DNA and through epigenetics as well. So passed on trauma, so to speak. And today we are going to be dissecting and talking about part 2, the sister wound, which is born of the witch wound. So last week we talked about the witch wound, how it's this greater cultural phenomenon that took place over hundreds and hundreds of years, that took place hundreds of years ago, but that is still affecting women today enormously because of how culture and society and is now conditioned to act and behave towards women, and how women also now behave as a result of those experiences. Now, so today, the sister wound is something that was born from the witch wound. The sister wound is where women turn on other women. That's what we're talking about. And this is a topic that is so close to my heart, as you're about to find out. And I'm sure it will be a topic that is very close to your heart as well, whether you're aware of this at the moment or not. By the end of the episode, I assure you, you will realize that, oh my gosh, yes, I've had these experiences too, of course, with your own unique nuances, but you will have 100%, I guarantee it, every single woman on this planet has either been on the receiving end of these sister wounds, so the recipient of the behaviors from other women, or have inflicted this themselves on other women, or girls on girls as well, right? Because it is something that you're about to hear that we carry and are born with, right from when we're so little and still developing as adolescent children, and are not even aware of what we're doing. And to be honest, a lot of the adults, a lot of the women who act in this way as well are not actually aware. So this isn't, never any of my episodes are, but this time I really just want to put extra emphasis here. This episode is not about blaming anybody or pointing the finger at anyone. This is really just about expanding your awareness so that then you individually can go away and do something about it. So the sister wound is something that, like yourself, I too have been experiencing from as far back as I can remember, from when I was a little child, almost from when I was probably a baby or a toddler for sure. And I have seen the effects and been on the receiving end of these sister wounds in so many different ways. But it's only recently in the last few years that I really was able to understand what was happening, and that actually those experiences were a result of sister wounds. I wasn't even aware of this term. I wasn't even aware of this phenomenon. It's still something that was still something that I'm unpacking, but I really feel like I've done a lot of healing on this, and I am very, very much coming out on the other side of this, which is why I'm really keen and excited to share this experience and this information with you. But as I said, it's something that I have been experiencing, and many of you will have too, from almost when I was a toddler. You might be wondering, how can I remember back to when I was a toddler and what actually happened? And you're absolutely right. To my knowledge, I cannot, right? Not consciously. Does my body remember? 100%, I'm sure of it. And subconsciously, I'm sure I remember as well. So anything that happened then is still living within me, right? And is affecting how I show up today. But there are stories that I've heard, that I've been told, and when you put them all together, it just all makes perfect sense. And there's just no denying sometimes how a jigsaw can fall into place sometimes, right? How all the pieces of the puzzle come together. And so my very first experience of the sister wound, to my knowledge, was from my blood sister. So I have a sister who is 6 years my senior, and from when I was very little, she rejected me. For what reasons exactly, I cannot say 100%. As an adult now, I would take a guess that she had inherited sister wounds of her own. And she was a child, of course, herself. She was only 6 years old. And she played them out on me in our dynamics and in our relationship. So she was not aware of what she was doing. I think also there were some environmental circumstances as well, which definitely triggered or fueled her behavior and her rejection of me. But she never really accepted me. She didn't like that I was there, right? And you might be thinking, well, this is not uncommon. Some siblings just are like that. And what you're going to start to see and begin to understand as I talk about this subject and share my examples with you is that no, you're absolutely right. These things are not uncommon. That's the point. It happens all the time, yet we just don't see it for what it actually is. And when we can see it for what it actually is, then we can begin to heal, right? So as an older sibling, she rejected me. She didn't want another child in the family, that was for sure. She went 6 years of having all the attention from our extended family, all her uncles and aunties, both my parents, my grandparents. We grew up around our family with a lot of family members around us. So she had all their undivided attention. And then suddenly I come along and she wasn't so crash hot on the idea of having to share that. And then, of course, they doted on me because I was a new baby. I was little, I was toddler, I was a baby. And so this whole, as we do, right? The attention can so often shift to the newborn, and the older sibling can often start to feel left out, right? But because, and you could put it down to just that, but because of the way our relationship has then continued to unfold, I can now say, no, it's more than that. I believe, I can never say for certainty, of course I cannot, but I believe that this was a cause of many sister wounds that were already embedded in her. And of course, as a child, I wanted nothing but to have a loving relationship with my sister, to feel that connection, to have that friendship. So she was physically, I had a sister in my life, but there was no experience of that sisterhood in that relationship. So I almost feel like it's more of a tease and a little bit more heartbreaking as well. And because you have that person there, but what you desire from that relationship, they're not able to give you and you're not able to have. So for me, this is where the sister wound, or where I first experienced the sister wound from, was from directly from my sister. And as I said right at the beginning, I'm not blaming her, right? She was a child and she has to unpack all these things for herself. That's her journey, and there's no blame there whatsoever. But that rejection started off a domino effect of how I then began to show up with other women, other girls as well. So naturally, I then went to seek this sisterly bond and this sisterly connection outside of my family. And at the age of about 7 or 8, in primary school, a new girl, a new family moved in across the road. There was a girl exactly my age in my year. She was new to the area, new to the school. I befriended her. We used to walk to school together, or both our mums would walk us to school together. Our parents and our families became friends, and she fast became my best friend. As they would say, she became my BFF, my best friend for life, as my daughter would put it. And to me, she was my entire world. Now, in hindsight, as an adult, I can look back and say, wow, how blindsided I was in that desire for that friendship, that excitement, that joy, that love that I felt was never reciprocated from the beginning. Now, we went on to be best friends for about, I'd take a guess at for about 6 years at least, if not longer, 7, 8 years even. And there were periods in the middle there, certainly, and towards the end, where she was like my sister, and she became that sister that I never had. And I loved this girl. I would have done anything for her. We were two peas in a pod. We were inseparable. She was everything, right? She was my absolute best friend. And this is the one that really hurt. So for whatever reasons, she did what she did. And I've unpacked this when I've done my shadow work and everything. But around the age of 12 or 13, she betrayed me in the most hurtful way that I could never, ever have foreseen coming or imagined. And so essentially, she pretty much ditched me without explaining that she no longer enjoyed our friendship, or that she was looking to move away from our friendship. No conversation. But I mean, at that age, do kids really communicate about this sort of stuff? Probably not, right? Because they don't maybe have the ability to articulate it. 2, they probably don't even know what they're doing, right? And for her, I don't think she ever did what she did in a malicious way, but she really was just following her heart. And I can see now that actually, even though we did at one point in our friendship build and develop such a close friendship, that actually we really were two very different people. It was circumstances that put us together. The fact that we lived across the road from each other and we walked to school together in the same direction and all of those kind of things, that pushed our friendship together. And then out of that grew a genuine love. But as personalities go, we were really different people. And when you start secondary school, you're opened up to so many more people. And she essentially ditched me for another girl and went off with another girl. And I was so heartbroken. And to this day, it was one of the most difficult things that I've ever had to go through. At the time, I didn't know it, but I actually fell into a depression I didn't know that's what it was at the time, but if I describe the symptoms to you now, it's so obvious. But I would hold it all in, manage to get through school. It was miserable. It was so challenging every day to just get through the school day, focus on my studies, get through my classes, watch her hanging out with this new girl, at the same time try to form some new friendships of my own that I didn't really feel, where I didn't really feel, necessarily deep connections or genuine, authentic closeness with people there. It was a case of who's available. And also at the same time, being really aware that I don't want to just be that person who's being ditched. So now I'm going to just latch on to some random people. I didn't want to be that person. Like I've always had a lot of integrity around my authenticity. So the people that I then did want to go on to hang out with, I really felt like it needed to be sincere. And I did want to actually spend time with them. But at the same time, I was just deeply sad as well. So sad. And then I would come home. I'd say hello to whoever's in the house downstairs. If there was anyone there, maybe sometimes it was just my sister. So I wouldn't get questioned. My mum and dad wouldn't be home from work yet. I'd drop my bag off, take my shoes off, drop my coat off. I'd go upstairs and I'd lock my bedroom door from the inside and I would sob and I would just cry my eyes out just to release everything that I had been holding in all day. And only when I felt like I had cried it all out, and sometimes I'd be there for about an hour. And that was the point where like my mum would come home and she'd see I'm not downstairs, so then she'd come looking for me. And I never wanted her to see just how much it had been affecting me, because obviously they were all aware of what was going on. And I think sometimes when you love somebody so much, and even though they've betrayed you, the last thing you want is the people you love to start pointing the finger at them like they've done something wrong, even though you feel like you have been wronged, because it's still hurtful for them to be angry at that person because you still love them. So I didn't want to feel that anymore, and I didn't want to hear it, because then that would have just been too much for me to handle. So I did that for months and months. I can't even remember how long that went on for. And that was my first experience of a really big betrayal. And the one time in my life that I think I really, really, truly had my heart broken was by my so-called then best friend, not a partner, not a man, not a boyfriend or anything like that, but by my best friend at the age of 13 or 14. It was something like that. And that changed the course how I showed up in life with other women and girls. Again, I didn't know this then. And this is all in hindsight. This is all now because I've done the work and I'm looking back and I'm like, wow, I see the patterns. I can see how that's so obvious, and I can understand why these things then unfolded and why I behaved and acted in the way that I did. But of course, when you're in it, you can't see that, and you don't see that until you do get out of it, right? But that experience with that girl back then changed the entire course of my relationships with girls and girlfriends moving forward. I was unable to trust any woman or girl after that. Surprise, surprise, right? Of course I wasn't able to, because the hurt was so deep and the betrayal was so deep. I had subconsciously put up those barriers to protect myself so I wouldn't get hurt, and I wasn't able to even open up to other girls after that. Not until very recently, anyway. And so I moved through the rest of secondary school and college, where I did my A-levels, and then only when I went to university did things begin to they began to shift a little bit, but not entirely. So all through secondary school and college, I didn't even want any close friendships with girls. All of my friends, all of my best friends were just blokes. I just found it easier because you didn't get sucked in to that he said, she said when you weren't around your own sex. They had their stuff going on, right? But it was such a different dynamics, and I just found it so refreshing. And I was always the girl hanging out with the boys. And it suited me fine. But if I'm honest with you, even though some of those blokes were some of my closest friends, I did long for that girl friendship, a girlfriend who I could confide in, who I couldn't confide in with these blokes, right, in quite the same way. And I missed that, but I wasn't going to allow myself to go there. It was just an absolute no-no, and I wasn't prepared to put myself in that position. And when I did go to uni, there was a part of me, because it was a complete blank slate, right? A new city, new people. There was literally like one or two, maybe three people that had moved to the same city, and they were in a different university. There was this big university town here in the UK, and I was at one university and they were at another one. So there was still some distance between us, but they were the only people I knew. Otherwise, everybody in that city was new to me, right? So it was an opportunity to really start again. And I found myself wanting to build these new friendships with girls, to have some close girlfriends in my life again. But no matter how much I tried, they never came through for me. I would always end up being the one who was rejected, left out, or the extra person in already a close group of girls. And no matter how much I enjoyed the company of a particular girl and poured my love and my attention and my commitment into that friendship, it was never quite reciprocated in the way that I was craving and desiring. And this just deepened that hurt within me. I began to really question whether there was something wrong with me, and my ability to have these kind of relationships and have these friendships with other women. And this goes on, fast forward a little bit, right? You know, university's like 3 years. Actually, I did it for 4 years because I took a gap year as well. And there were lovely girls in my university course, and they came and when I lived with girls, all of those kind of things. But those friendships never really got close in the way that I was looking for. And I came to sort of accept that I never would have them, and continued with me. So it was more like a defeat well into my adult life, right? Bearing in mind, this real deep hurt and wound began when I was, let's say, 13, for argument's sake. And I only really healed it. And I feel like I truly came out the other side of it at age 43. That's what? 30 years of carrying that sister wound. That sounds insane, but that one event stayed with me for that long and went on to restrict me in having the friendships and the relationships that I desired, and really shaped how I showed up. There was always this energy within me without me knowing, where there was this fear at the back of my head. I was always worried that they are going to walk off, they're going to betray me, or they will never love me as much as I love them. This doubt of being enough for them as a girlfriend, this mindset of scarcity, the scarcity that if they have somebody else in their life who they have a really close friendship with, then there's no room for me, because that's what I had learnt as a child. Now, as an adult, now I can almost laugh at this, but of course it wasn't a laughable situation back then, because that's just not true. There is no scarcity, right? We know as adults, hopefully we all know as adults. It's like when you have children, whether you have your own children or not, maybe you can relate it to nieces or nephews, perhaps, right? But just because you have more than one child, you don't love one more and love another less. Just because that relationship is different, you can have an equal amount of love for as many of them that are in your life, that are present in your life, those relationships, but they're just beautifully different and unique in their own ways. And so this is true for friendships as well. But I didn't see this. I couldn't see this. I couldn't believe it, right? Because there was this place of scarcity. And it is really sad because women really do operate in this way. We fight for attention. We fight to strive and be the one at the forefront in front of one another. There's this sense of competition. Like if she's beautiful and she's successful, then that means I cannot be. So then we try to dethrone that woman. When in actual fact, nobody needs dethroning because we are all inherently queens by birth. It is not something we have to do. It's not something we have to work towards or gain. It's not something that we have to prove that we deserve. It is our birthright. We are queens and we each deserve our own throne. Yet here we are on a day-to-day basis. Women are constantly trying to dethrone each other. And it's so, so sad. Fortunately, for me, I don't work in a corporate environment and I haven't done in such a long time. And surprise, surprise, when I did work in corporate environment, I worked in a male-dominated industry. Not only because most industries can be male-dominated, but subconsciously I chose that because it was more comfortable for me, right? So I used to work in architecture and most of the people in my team, in my office, were men. And when I did work with women, there was some of this resistance and slight conflict, right? Usually from their part, and not from mine, because by this point I was a young adult and really wanting some close girlfriend relationships, but they just weren't materializing still for me. And that's why this topic is so important, right? Because we don't need to be pulling each other down when we already have so much that we are up against. Everything that I discussed last week. So if you didn't listen to the Witch Wound episode, I encourage you to go back and listen to that, because the two, although individual in their topics, really do come together to paint a bigger picture of how it all comes together and how one was birthed from the other and the bigger challenges that we face as women. But we're up against this patriarchal society. We're up against this cultural conditioning from hundreds and hundreds of years. All of these things that we are fighting against and still trying to prove ourselves to be equal, to be worthy, to be seen, to be heard, to be respected. And then on top of that, we try to pull each other down. That's just fucked up. But we do it. And we have been doing it for so long, and it is time for it to stop. I say enough, no more. Because the power in women, in an individual woman, I've talked about this at great length already, when she is in her true feminine divine power, she is unstoppable. Put together these women side by side in a community of sisterhood. Wowzers. You have got a force that you cannot stop. And it is beautiful when women uplift each other. And I finally began to understand this in recent years. In 2021, when I was actually sitting down and doing an exercise where I was trying to build my relationship with my intuition, this was a period where I struggled to connect with my intuition. Of course, my intuition's always there. Everyone has an intuition. But I couldn't hear it. I couldn't feel it. Like, it was just so disconnected because I hadn't built that relationship with it. And I sat down and I was doing this exercise and I asked my intuition and I received some guidance. And I didn't understand it, but thank goodness I still acted on the guidance and the nudges that I received. And in that particular moment, I was asking for something, some support in a particular way. And 5 names came up and I scribbled them down. It did not pass me or pass my awareness. I was very, very aware that the 5 names that came up were all women. Not women that were close in my life to me at that time, but 5 women. When actually at that moment in my life, my closest friends were still all male. So it was really interesting that 5 women's names came up. The first name at the top, which I felt a really strong pull towards, was a lady that I'd met pre-2021. It would have been like 10 years before or something like that, or 8 years before, right? So some time before. And I didn't know how or why I was meant to be contacting these women, just that I asked for some support, asked for some guidance and direction, and this is what my intuition told me to do, just go make contact. And so I quite literally picked up the phone and said, this is what I asked for, and your name popped up. I don't know how you might play a part in this, but, you know, does anything come into your mind? And each of them came back and said something different to me. But that first woman, immediately, she said to me, yes, Dharmi. She goes, there's the sisterhood. It runs on WhatsApp groups. It's an online group. It's global. And she went on to tell me more about it. Would you like to join? And it was an instant, yes, I do. Because even though I didn't know it at the time, I was aware that I was craving greater contact with women. I was feeling this pull for having more women in my life, because I think at the time there probably weren't any at all, other than like my mom and my sister. And so I was like, yes, absolutely. And so I joined this sisterhood. And then I happened to mention it to one of my best friends, who is also my partner in believing. And that's basically, for those of you who are unfamiliar with that phrase, it's just somebody who I check in with either on a weekly or fortnightly basis. And we keep each other accountable, but we also share our personal development, our business development, or anything that's going on in life. And we make sure each other are on track, and we know each other's patterns, we know each other's limitations. So if they come up, we pull each other up and say, hey, hang on a second, you said you were going to do this and you haven't. So maybe let's look at that, what's going on there, that sort of thing, right? It helps you to move forward. So he's been my accountability partner since I began this transformational work way back in 2020. And so I spoke to him that same week, and he says, oh, I know of a group. It came up through a friend of a friend, and I know she's just started an online group. He goes, I don't really know too much about it, but I'll put you in touch with her. And I was like, yeah, absolutely, do that. And it turns out it was another women's group that was being run online on WhatsApp. And it turns out that actually it was a very local group for me right here in Leicestershire. And these women have now gone on, like, what is this, 4 years on, have gone on to be such important individuals in my life, and been pivotal in my healing of this sister wound. And I never knew this at the time. Like, they are women that I call my sisters. we're all so different. Sometimes they trigger me in different ways. I see things, but it's through those triggers and through the supportive, loving connection and that exists within this group that I always turn around and say, what is that saying about me? This is an opportunity to heal this wound, and allow it to help me to grow forward using those. And these women have been so, so important to help me in the healing, and were the first women that I was able to call sisters, and have become very much part of my sisterhood community for me in my life in the last 4 years. And this began back in 2021, and I didn't even know what was happening at the time, right? And that's the beauty of following your intuition and your guidance. You can ask for something and it doesn't logically make sense. But if you go with it and trust it and surrender to it, it can take you down the most magical journeys and the most magical places. Only, years down the line, sometimes can you begin to understand what was unfolding for you. This deep, deep healing that I didn't even know. That I needed, right? Because at the time I was not aware of this phenomenon called the sister wound, that it existed in me and that it was the very cause of all these difficulties and challenges that I had been playing out and repeating time after time after time. And there are so many examples already. I think you'll probably thinking about your own life, right? And thinking, oh yeah, this happened to me here, and so, like names might be popping up, or certain experiences that might be popping up for you, where you have been on the receiving end of these sister wounds, whether it was something as direct as the betrayal that I experienced when I was in secondary school at the age of 13, or something more indirect that I experienced as a little child through my blood sister, through the wounds that she was carrying generationally, or in other ways, right? I'll give you some other examples, like how it may have shown up for you. I talked about rejection. I mentioned rejection. When I was doing my A-level, so I was 17, 18 at the time, and at college, I just came out of a long-term relationship and I was absolutely heartbroken. And I had a good, close friendship with a couple of girls. We all hung out together. They were some of them were like the girlfriends of some of my best friends, some of the blokes that I'd mentioned previously. And so we would hang out as a group together. And when I broke up with my long-term boyfriend at the time, I really needed these girls. I needed their support. I was lost. I was confused. I was sad. I was heartbroken. And I just really needed some sister connection. And two of the girls really welcomed me into their little group, their bubble. And I was so grateful to that. But one girl, right from the beginning, just rejected me. And I could never understand why, because I didn't know her. I hadn't done anything to offend her or cause her any kind of grievance. And I just didn't understand why she was holding a grudge against me. Like, what was her problem? She just wouldn't even open up and allow me the opportunity to have a friendship, to even see if we connected or even liked each other's company. And in fact, I think we really would have got on quite well, because for my part, my mind wasn't there. My energy wasn't there. I didn't have anything against her. And I actually really liked her, right? I found her really interesting. And I did want her to be better friends with her. But she just wasn't having it. Like, she just rejected me, and no matter what happened. And that made the situation really awkward, because there'd be the four of us here, two of the girls in the middle who was equally welcoming to her and equally welcoming to me. And then there was us two on the other end, me like really trying hard to just befriend her, and her just unapologetically like, no freaking way, I'm not interested. I don't want anything to do with you, Dharmi. And I just didn't understand why. Now I can see that rejection was some kind of sister wound that she was carrying. I clearly not a generic sister wound, but I must have triggered something in her. And I say clearly not a generic sister wound because she had no issues befriending those other two girls and having very, very close friendship with them. Maybe it was about scarcity. Maybe she saw me as competition. I don't know, right? And I guess I'll never know because I don't know her anymore and I'm not about to have this conversation with her, nor is it really important. But something came up where she saw me as competition, or I triggered something in her that she didn't want to face and look at in herself. Who knows? But that was another example of the sister wound. Just that rejection. There was just no need, when really what you want, ideally, in that situation is for another girl to turn around and openly open their arms to you and say, come on in, I understand what it feels like to have your heart broken. It's okay, we got you. We got you. You're going to heal, and we're going to laugh, we're going to cry together, and you're going to get through this, and you're going to come out the other end stronger and better for it. But no, there wasn't that. And then, to my devastation, I went through most of my life like this, right? The first time I think the first time I really had any beautiful sister friendships was when I moved to Melbourne, Australia. And I was so surprised by it, that these female friendships were so welcoming and so loving and invited me into their lives. I almost didn't know how to be in a friendship with another woman. But I also was so open to it and I lapped it up, right? And it was a very, very unique and magical time in my life. And I'm also very aware why those gorgeous opportunities did come to me. But that was the first time I had a taste for it. So I had this little taste, but then when I moved back to England, that went away again, right? So that encouraged me to sort of like, it showed me that I could have them. It showed me what I was missing. It showed me what I really wanted. And I began this work, like I said, initially not realizing what this work was, where this was even going. In 2021, that was the very beginning. I think the real healing began. Of course, all of this added up to the healing, like my experience in Melbourne prior to that. That is part of the healing, because then I was able to see for myself that I can have these beautiful friendships, and not all women are out there with a dagger to stab me in the back at the first opportunity. And there's nothing wrong with me. Like, not everyone rejects me, right? People do want my friendship. Other women do want my friendship. But even then, when my daughter started having very, very similar experiences at school, my goodness, did it trigger me. And it was so difficult, as you can imagine. So she, at the age of, don't know how old she would have been, but at the end of reception, moving into year one. So it happened at the beginning of year one. What would she have been? 6 or 7 years old, something like that. She experienced a betrayal, not too dissimilar to the one I experienced at school. The difference being my friendship was of about 5 or 6 years and hers was still newly formed, but she was also a lot younger. And she also poured herself in to this friendship with the same loyalty and love that I know that I did. And she felt that betrayal by this other girl. And it broke my heart. And I'm openly admitting this. I'm not proud of it, but I was so angry at this other child for hurting my little girl in the way that she did. But of course, that wound was not just about my daughter. That wound was about me. I would sit on the end of my bed, like I would show up strong for her and console her and explain to her how these things happen, how friendships don't stay forever, they come and go, and all of those other kind of things. And she would be crying and sobbing. I could see how, in my opinion, it was a little T trauma for her as well. Mine was a little T trauma. Hers was a little T trauma too. And it has stuck with her, and it's something that I'm working closely with her to reprogram more positively as well. The same way that I've come to heal my wounds as well. I'm trying to help her to heal her wounds, but she's not an adult, so she doesn't understand all these concepts in quite the way that we do. I mean, many women don't, adults don't, I mean to say. So it's a different process, and I don't know how long it will take. But it definitely was a little T trauma for her, because she now repeats these patterns with her friendships, right? But she would go to bed crying and not understanding why she was rejected. And then after showing up all strong for her and staying calm and putting her to bed, I would sit on the end of my bed and I would sob like the way I sobbed when I was a teenager in my bedroom, when I would lock the door. And I knew it, and I didn't really know it at the time, that it was just bringing up things that I hadn't quite healed in myself. And years on now, so my daughter is now in the equivalent of year 6, but it has stayed with her for those 6 years, to the point where it has become so, it impacts her so much that we decided to withdraw her from school, and I homeschool her now, because the social anxiety, and I do believe it is bigger in her mind, from her perspective, than the reality of the situation that actually exists outside. But that's not the point. If she feels like it's a big thing in her, then we have to accept it for that, right? Because it's how she feels and how it's making her feel and how it's affecting her. But it began to affect the anxiety around her friendships, and friendships all around the girls. She had never had any issues making friends with boys. But all these anxiety around the friendships around her girlfriends, or their or lack thereof, I should say, was so much it began to impact her academic abilities at school and her confidence in her work and her focus and all of those kind of things. So we withdrew her from school to just relieve that pressure from her, so she doesn't have to be in that situation. And she is the most social person you'll ever meet, and she has no issues making friendships elsewhere. And so that, I am hoping, is part of her healing, that she's seeing that she is capable, that she isn't rejected everywhere by everyone. But it was very much pertained and isolated to her school environment. And from talking to her teachers and working with the teachers to support her over the years, they have repeatedly said to us, oh, this is just what girls are especially bad, especially at this age. We don't see it in boys, but girls tend to do it a lot. This is just normal. It's part of their development. We don't really know why, but girls always turn on each other. They befriend each other like they're best friends, and then the next day they ditch each other and walk off like nothing's ever happened, like there was nothing there. They just leave each other and abandon each other and reject each other and turn on each other. And I'm listening to these teachers, and it's not just one teacher, multiple different teachers over the years have said the same things to us. And inside myself, I'm saying, okay, that might be the case, which is shocking and horrifying. And my heart goes out to all of these girls then. But that doesn't mean it's okay. Like, what on earth is going on here? Like, this can't just be about development, because this is really, really unhealthy. And again, it's only now that I'm beginning to see and understand that, my God, this is the sister wound playing out in these little children from as early as 5, 6 years old, probably even younger than that, right? I shared it in the story how my sister treated me. She was only 6 when I was born. So she's not even doing it consciously. And nor are these kids at school. And that allowed me to then turn my anger into this empathy for all of these little girls. Because, yes, my little one was reaping the brunt of it in many ways, because perhaps she's a little sensitive to these things. She's very emotionally sensitive, or whatever, right? Whatever the reasons being. But that doesn't mean so many other girls in her year are not either. And that's really sad and scary at the same time, because if these are the patterns and behaviors they're learning at this age, then it's no wonder and surprise that when they're in their 20s, when they're in the 30s, and maybe even in the 40s, I mean, I pray by the time they get to their 40s that they have re-looked at their values and are re-looking at how they show up in the world, you know, like many of us here now in our 40s. Most of you tuned in will be in your 40s or thereabouts, approaching or just after, where you're looking at life, looking at relationships with a different lens and beginning to make those changes for the better now. But certainly through your 20s and maybe even through your 30s, they're going to continue with these kind of behaviors. And what also scared me was because she was being treated in these really cruel ways, naturally to defend herself, she would then turn around and say, well, I'm going to do that to them. And I don't like her, or I hate her, or I hate so-and-so, and she kicked me, so I kick her back. Those kind of things. And I'm like, whoa, no. We don't bring ourselves down and make ourselves small to match their behavior. No, baby girl. We always stay and be the bigger person in this. And that's so hard for a child to understand because they're hurting and they don't understand why they're being treated in this way. And so then it's no surprise that this behavior continues throughout school, through college, into the workplace, when women are like, and that's, you know, this cat fight where they get their claws out and they just want to tear each other down. It's really, really sad. And it's got to stop. It's got to stop for us. And for those of you who are listening, who have children, who have daughters, or even nieces, or younger sisters, it has to stop for us and it has to stop for them. Remember, when we heal for the generations that have gone before us, and we heal for the generations that are coming after us. And that brings me some peace, because I truly do feel like I have healed my sister wounds. I'm not saying there's no residue left. This is big work. Undoing, I mentioned, you know, from just that wound from when I was 13, that's 30 years. Even if I have been working on this knowingly or unknowingly since 2021, 4 years of healing may not completely clear everything that was the behaviors and the subconscious programming and the beliefs of 30 years of my life. Probably more like 40 years, right? So I'm not saying that there may not be any residue and it may surprise me and suddenly pop up somewhere in my life. It may well, and I'm ready for it. But I can say that I have done the bulk of the healing. And I know this. Do you know why? Because for the first time in my life, in the last 12 months, not because it sounds cool or I'm trying to fit into a certain crowd or be hip, or I don't really care what other people think when I say this and when I use these words, because I'm not saying it to be a particular type of person. I say it because I actually really sincerely mean it. For the first time in my life, I'm able to turn to another woman who I may not have a deep relationship with, who I may have only just met, and be able to call her my sister. Because I mean it. She is my sister. And for my part, at least, she is a queen just like I am a queen. I see the goddess in her just like I see the goddess in me. And I will hold her up high just as I strive to hold myself up high. I will lift her up and I will empower her so she can be in her true glory and full potential and in her full power. Because that's the power of sisterhood. We rise each other up. And without having done this work around the sister wound myself, and so much work, I've approached it from so many different angles. It's not a one size fits all or one tool that fixed everything miraculously. I've done it on many different layers, in many different ways, and especially that particular wound from when I was 13, that betrayal, I had to go over it again and again and again and again and again. And only when I've done that work, which I now have, am I able to sit here and do this podcast for you women and lead you. To stand here and say, I want my sisters to rise. I want to empower you. I want you to be glorious and powerful and beautiful. And I want you to see that in the same way that I can see that. And I will do that, and I will lead you, and I will help you in whatever way I can for you to achieve that. 5 years ago, even less than that, I could not have sat here and said that. Because in my heart, there was a resistance to opening up still to women. In fact, 3 years ago, I openly said to my business coach at the time, or my marketing coach, I think it was at the time, and I just could not have contemplated this concept, right? It was so, to me, at least I was saying on out loud from a conscious level. And what I was saying was, no. I don't want to work just with women. I need to work with men and women. I need that balance of energy. And the thought of working just with women alone, not only did that seem ridiculous for something that I would want, I didn't want that, but nor could I see myself doing something like that. Like, how on earth who am I to lead another woman? What do I know about women? I don't know enough. I haven't spent most of my life hanging out with women. So how can I lead them anywhere? But I didn't want to. But now I can see, and I realize that actually me saying I don't want to was just a way to protect myself, because I was still really scared of being hurt, of opening myself up to these relationships, to these friendships. So all of that healing that I did around my sister wound has allowed me to step into what I'm really supposed to do, which is to lead other women. And now I cannot be moved on that. And that just grows stronger and deeper. That purpose is so powerful and clear in my mind, at least for this time of my life anyway. That is what I'm here to do. To build a community of women, to empower women through my podcast, through my courses, through my one-to-one coaching, through the community, in all the different ways, through the in-person workshops, the talks that I deliver, to help you break out of these conditionings, to help you to heal these century-old wounds, decade-old wounds that are preventing you from living your fullest, best life. And I could not have sat here and done that if I didn't heal that myself. And it is such a beautiful place to be in, to be able to turn around and see another woman and call her my sister. I actually can't really put it into words. There's no other feeling like it. And no disrespect to any men listening. And I love my male friendships. And I love coaching men as well. When I was still coaching men, it is a beautiful, different dynamic. And I'll never say never in the future, perhaps. But uplifting and empowering and coaching other women and working with women and these friendships that I have with women, they are completely different. They are completely different. There is no replacement for it. So at the beginning, as I said to you, if you're somebody who has struggled in developing or holding friendships with other women, or who have been rejected and excluded by other women, or maybe you're that person who scrolls through social media, or maybe in the workplace, you're really quick to just judge other women, just stop and think for a moment. Why? Why are those words coming out of your mouth? Why do you judge them? What are you afraid of? Do you think if they have something that you can't have it? Is it a her or me situation? Can it not be both of you? Or if that wound is coming from another person towards you, maybe you can show a little bit of empathy. You don't have to put up with anything, right? I'm not saying become a pushover in any way, but have some empathy in that maybe this other woman doesn't quite know that she's carrying some sister wounds. And it's not you and it's not personal. That she's rejecting you or lashing out at you or trying to pull you down. That just shows that actually you are in your power and you're intimidating her and triggering her. And not to carry that knowledge to inflate your ego, but just to be quietly confident and say, okay, I know myself. That's not going to make me come down from my throne. If I can, if I think it's appropriate, if I think she's open to it, I will try and I'll reach out my hand for her to grab onto, and I will help to lift her up too. But if she's not, then that's also okay. Her journey is her own and it's not mine. You continue to do the healing. I hope today's episode has helped many of you to see some of these different experiences and dynamics that you have experienced either in the past or currently experiencing with a different lens, a lens of this sister wound and how it infiltrates every single woman's life, whether it be at school or at home or in the workplace or in social situations too. And the truth is, it will continue for a long time, certainly anyway, because not everybody does have this awareness to want to do the work. But for those of you who are listening, if you're listening to this episode, take this as your sign that you are ready to do something about this, that you are ready to break this cycle for those gone before you and those that are coming after you. If you don't know how, just reach out. I'm happy to guide you. There's so many different ways that we can work together, whether that be one-to-one or in a group setting. If you want to do that, or if you just got a simple question, right? And you're not ready to take that step yet. You just want to ask me a question. I'm always here. Just flick me an email or message me on, depending on which platform you're on. You can leave the message right there, right? There's so many different ways you can contact me, and I will help you to start taking those steps, one step at a time. So let this be your sign. We can't do anything about those other women who aren't ready to do this work, but that's their journey, not yours. And I can tell you from my lived experience, I've done that healing and how free I feel and how many beautiful, beautiful sisterhood, sister friendships and relationships that I have now in my life. And if I can have that, even though not all the women in my life have done the healing, it's still so valuable and so nourishing. And the more you have, I've said this a gazillion times before, you become a magnet for it. So when it starts with one friendship and then it's two friendships and then three, and then before you know it, you're just surrounded by these most gorgeous women. And then better still, you're surrounded by gorgeous women who don't have these sister wounds themselves, because either their mother or grandmother did the work, and so it hasn't necessarily been passed on to them, or they've already done the work themselves or are doing the work. So then you come together with these beautiful women who don't have all this rubbish, who don't compare you with them and are equally supportive of you as you are of them. Because that's what we're supposed to do. And my God, we are so powerful and unstoppable when we come together like this. So do it for you. Do it for the generations to come. Do it for your other sisters around you. Hope you enjoyed that. Yeah, break the cycle. Break the cycle. Take care now, and I will see you back here next week. Bye bye. Thank you for joining me on this episode of High Self Mastery. If something landed, moved you, or sparked a shift, I'd love to hear from you. Be sure to follow, subscribe, and share this episode with a woman in your life that is also ready to rise. And if you found value in today's conversation, please take a moment to rate and review this podcast, especially in these early days. It really helps others to find this work too. If you're craving deeper support and sisterhood, join my mailing list using the link below, where you'll be the first to receive free meditations, learn about up-and-coming retreats, and other ways that we can work together. Until next time, honor your truth and trust in the timing of your becoming.